Hello, everybody. Brother Trey here again, here with another Bible study. I know I just uploaded a Genesis 29. My internet's a little slow, so it kind of delays. It takes a little bit to upload a video. So, anyway, what we say? Leah, they just, what was it? Anyway, Laban had just deceived Jacob into marrying Leah first, because it was customary to give the firstborn before the younger, right? And then so he didn't tell him that information, kind of left that information out. That would have been important to know. And then, so he tricked him, but he ended up still working 7 more years for Rachel. He got the woman, the love of his life, regardless. Then their handmaidens too. And then Leah conceived 4 sons for Jacob, but Rachel was still barren. So here we go in chapter 30. And it reads, and when Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister, and said unto Jacob, give me children, or else I die. And Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And she said, behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. And she gave him Bilhah her husband, gave her Bilhah her handmaid to wife, and Jacob went into her. So yes, again, he did get another wife. And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. And Rachel said, God hath judged me, and has also heard my voice, and hath given me a son. Therefore called she his name Dan. So Rachel put Bilhah in her stead because she couldn't bear children. He gave Bilhah to Jacob so she can have a child. So it's kind of like a proxy. So she couldn't do it, so she put somebody in her place. So that's serving her. So she conceived, and it says, and Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister, and I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. So they were competing, because she was jealous of her sister because she could not bear a child. She was barren. And when Leah saw that she had left bearing, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. She gave her to Jacob to wife. It's missing a 2. But yes, again, as proxy, this is how it was done back then, before there were laws now, that he took another wife. So now, if you didn't count him, he has 4 wives. And was it? Great wrestlers have wrestled with my sister. I prevailed, and she called his name Naphtali. And then Leah saw and left bearing. She took Zilpah her maid, and gave her Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad. So Zilpah bore a son, another son, and then Zilpah, Leah's maid, bore Jacob a second son. So he got pregnant again. And Leah said, Happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher. So she had another one. So the daughter, she said people will call her blessed because she bore another son through her handmaiden. And Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field and brought them unto his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy son's mandrakes. So I don't know what a mandrake is, but I think it's some sort of plant or vegetable. And if you must look it up for yourself, it's spelled Mandrakes. Okay? So, and she said unto her, is it a small matter that thou hast taken my husband? And wouldest thou take away my son's mandrakes also? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. So they made a trade. Rachel said, you can have our husband tonight if I can have your son's mandrakes. So these must have been desirable mandrakes, whatever they are. So she gave it to him. Leah desired to spend the night with her husband, and Rachel desired to have the mandrakes. If it was food, it must have been very tasty to do all that. So, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. So she basically paid to spend the night with her own husband. And God hearkened unto Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob the fifth son. So God blessed it. So anytime a child is born, the Lord blesses the people. God creates life. Therefore, he's blessing these people, these women with children. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen. They would be still barren if the Lord didn't bless it, right? The Lord creates life. So, no matter who their parents are, they're still blessed if a child, they are appointed for that time to be born and conceived. So such a time as this, they are born. So, and God hearkened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob the fifth son. So he blessed Leah, and she paid a price to stay the night with her, to spend time with her husband. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire, because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she shall called his name Issachar. So she believes that the Lord heard her, has blessed her, given her hire, because she made a sacrifice. And she says because she had given her maiden to her husband, that because she made a sacrifice in her eyes so that she can have children. Now the Lord remembers her in that. And Leah conceived again and bore Jacob the sixth son. And Leah said, God hath endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And so she called his name Zebulun. So she says, because she had borne him 6 sons, she believes that her husband would live in her tent and dwell with her, because she had given him 6 sons now, even if it'd be through her and her handmaiden. So, and afterwards she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah, Dinah. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. So God remembered Rachel and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son and said, God hath taken away my reproach, removed her burden of being barren. And she called his name Joseph and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. So she believed the Lord was going to give him another son. So she was speaking up for it, that she would have another. Or it was just said that because she had already made the sacrifice of giving Jacob her handmaiden, and she had children, but she said, the Lord shall add to me another son, and it was Jacob. So it could be either way. And it came to pass, when Rachel had borne Joseph, that Jacob said unto Laban, send me away, that I may go on to mine own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served thee, and let me go, for thou knowest my service which I have done thee. So Jacob is asking to be relieved, to be sent out, to go to his own country, go to his own place, because he's got many wives, many children. He's blessed, and he wants to go to his own place. And don't you want to leave your parents' house so you can raise your family somewhere else? It's the way it normally goes. You leave your father and your mother, and you go to build your house of your own with your spouse and with your own children. It's the way it should be. So let's keep going. And Laban said unto him, I pray thee, if I have found favor in thine eyes, tarry, which means to stay or wait, for I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. So here, I think I said it in the last video because I was speaking ahead, but talking about Laban, about delaying people and trying to hold them in one spot. That he says, I have learned by experience that the Lord hath blessed me for thy sake. So he knows the blessing of the Lord is on Jacob, and the Lord has blessed Laban for Jacob's sake. So he sees it. He sees the favor of the Lord on him, and he wants to hold him there. Because I think he's kind of a little bit selfish right there. And he said, appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And he said, so he's willing to pay for him to stay, so he can still be blessed. And it still seems like selfishness to me. And he said unto them, thou knowest how I have served thee, and how thy cattle was with me. For it was little which thou hadst before I came, and it was now increased unto a multitude. And the Lord hath blessed me since my coming. And now when shall I provide for mine own house also? So he's clearly stating that Laban had a little, but the Lord has increased the cattle for Laban unto a multitude. Like he multiplied the cattle. He has blessed me since his coming. That's what Jacob said. Or was this what Laban says? Oh, no, it's Jacob. Jacob says, I have little you had before I came, and is now increased, multiplied. And the Lord hath blessed me since my coming, and now when shall I provide for my own house also? He's like, so I'm providing for you. I'm multiplying your cattle for your house. For you, he says, when shall I provide for my own house also? So when is it going to benefit me? Like you gave me wives, and they gave me children. But how am I going to provide for my own house, to my own children, for my own self? When am I going to flourish, right? He's thinking about himself. He's like, I'm doing all this for you. When is it going to benefit me? I've done all this work for you. When is it going to benefit me? And I'm going to start prospering. Now he's not trying to be selfish, but Laban's kind of selfish. It's all been for him. He didn't want to lose the blessing of the Lord with Jacob there. So Jacob left. And he said, what shall I give thee? And Jacob said, thou shalt not give me anything. If thou wilt do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep thy flock. He said, I will pass through all thy flock today, removing from thence all the speckled cattle and all the brown cattle among the sheep, and the spotted and the speckled among the goats. And of such shall be my hire. So he wants He said, you remove the spotted and speckled cattle and the brown cattle and all the brown cattle among the sheep, or among the sheep, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And of such shall be my hire. So he's wanting the spotted and speckled sheep and cattle and goats. He's spotted and speckled. So he's make a difference between his flock and Laban's flock. And that should, the spotted and speckled should be his hire. So he stated his wages again. So shall all my righteousness answer for me in time to come, when it shall come for my hire before thy face. Everyone that is not spotted and speckled among the goats and brown among the sheep, thou shalt be counted stolen with me. So he's saying if it's not spotted, speckled, or brown, then count it stolen. So, moving on. And Laban said, behold, I would it might be according to thy word. So, he said, let it be. And he removed that day the he-goats that were ring-streaked and spotted, and all the she-goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown among the sheep, and he gave them into the hand of his sons. And he set 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flock. So he took care of Laban's flock too. And Jacob took him rods of green poplar, and of the hazel and chestnut tree, and pilled white streaks in them, and made the white appear with such as was in the rods. And he set the rods which he had pilled before the flocks in the gutters and the watering troughs, when the flocks came to drink, that they should be conceived when they came to drink. And the flocks conceived before the rods, and brought forth ring-streaked, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob did separate the lambs, to set the faces of the flocks toward the ring-streaked, and all the brown, and the flock of Laban. And he put his own flocks by themselves, and them not unto Laban's cattle. So he separated the flocks from Laban. And it came to pass, whensoever the cattle did conceive, that Jacob laid the rods before the eyes of the cattle in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. So I think he's just, breeding for particular kinds. When the cattle were feeble, he put them not in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. And the man increased exceedingly, and had much cattle, and maid servants, and men servants, camels, and asses. So Jacob made sure he had the stronger flock, and then the feebler, the weaker were Laban's. So Jacob increased exceedingly, and much cattle, maid servants, and men servants, and camels, and asses. So Jacob made sure he had the stronger flock. And, I think this might have been somewhat of how Jacob was trying to get back at Laban for, deceiving him, and all that happened with him giving Leah instead of Rachel. And by this time he's changed his wages several times. So therefore Jacob increased much cattle, maid servants, and men servants, and camels, and asses. So, this could be a way that how we got back at him. So, the Lord continued to bless Jacob. Rachel's still barren. She gave her handmaiden so she can have children, and Leah stopped bearing so she can, and then she gave her handmaiden so that she can have children through her. But the Lord still blessed them. I know this is not how we do it now, but this is how they did it then. Having multiple wives, that was the thing. But Jacob still had sons and daughters through Rachel and Leah and Bilhah and Zilpah. The Lord blessed them. And, they kind of contended. They kind of almost competed with one another and having more children. They wanted to bless them, but they wanted more. I think they got a little jealous of each other. So Um, so once Joseph knew how he knew his little family was getting bigger and bigger for the multitudes, and he knew he wanted his own space. He didn't want to stay there any longer, so he wanted to leave. But then Laban saw the blessing on his life, that how because of Jacob's sake that he was being blessed. And then Jacob could see it too, how Laban's flocks had increased since Jacob had been there. But then Laban kind of bribed him to stay, saying, hey, what can I hire you to do for you to stay so I can continue to be blessed? And he said, give me the basis spotted, speckled, and brown, or part of your flocks to have them of my own. So, like I said in the last video, Laban likes to delay. So maybe, you might call a spirit of delay a little bit of a Laban. A Laban spirit, delay, a little bit of a delay, hindrance, a hindering spirit. You might consider it that, if you want to put a name on it, but it's not really. It's like everybody says hindering spirit or the spirit of delay, but Laban did kind of do that. But maybe it might have been a love because he didn't want, but he saw the favor, but then he also didn't want his family to leave. But anyway, the flocks multiplied on behalf of Jacob. Jacob had the stronger flock, and Laban the weaker, and Jacob increased. So the Lord blessed Jacob while he was still a part of Laban's house. So even though he was there and being held captive, he still multiplied. As with Abraham, when Abraham or Isaac multiplied, they sent him away because you were too many. But for Jacob's sake and Laban's sake, or on Jacob's behalf, Laban wanted him to stay so he could continue to be multiplied. He wasn't afraid for them to overtake him. I don't know why. But the Lord still blessed Jacob. And it's still a blessing. And it's still a seed of Abraham, so he's still blessed. And then, he's a blessing to bless others, so he was blessing Laban at the same time. Yeah. The Lord definitely indeed blessed Jacob. I don't think he was Israel. He might have been. He wasn't Israel at this time. I think they'll call him Jacob in chapter 30. So the Lord still blessed Jacob at this time, even though Laban was trying to keep him there. And like I said, we are blessed to bless others, and Laban saw it, so he kept him there. So that could be a thing too, is that people can see the blessing on our lives, the favor of God on our lives, and how it benefits them, so they might try to keep you there. God should keep you bound there, even though it'll be time to leave. So that's one thing to watch out for, that people see the favor of God, the blessings on it, how you bless them, and they might try to keep you there. I'll be discerning on that. May the Lord and His Holy Spirit guide you in that, to have you discern that when people are hindering you, having a spirit of Laban on you to hinder you from moving forward, from moving on. And if you're doing ministry, just think of that. Especially if you're moving the apostolic anointing, if you're moving from there to there, how they've noticed how their church has been blessed through your ministry, and that the sheep have increased. More people have come to the church from your ministry. Don't let them keep you there, because they've been blessed. And, the flock increases, the money increases. For the tithes and offerings from your ministry, don't let them keep you there. For their sake, for the simple fact that they're being blessed, and they want to hire you for that simple fact. And that could be a thing. They just bribe you or whatever to keep you there. But then it may come down to it. like Abraham and Lot, where they both become too great, and so they have to split up and go different directions. So that's also a thing. Like Abraham his people became too many, so they couldn't stay with Abimelech, and then Isaac got sent away because they were becoming too great. They were worried that they were going to overtake them and do them harm. So I know they made a covenant and say they won't harm one another, and they separated. So it's for the simple fact that they become too great, so they went to go start another. I mean, that can happen, and that can happen in church. A church becomes fruitful, and there's nothing wrong with that. Kind of is super blessed with a large congregation, and more people come in, but they're becoming so much that there's no room. So they might have to branch off to another location. Now we have another location, another branch. Can have another branch somewhere else, because the multitude, the population, the congregation can become so great. There's so many that you need to start another campus somewhere, and that's a good thing. The Lord has blessed that church, right? To that way, they're so great. There's not enough room for everybody, so they have to plant another church, and that's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And then that one will continue to grow. Maybe people have been traveling to that church because it's such a great church and fruitful, but the church becomes so great. Maybe that new church will be closer to their house, and they'll be able to help out there. So think about that. So I hope this has blessed you. But I hope this bless you. Don't let people keep you in the same spot if the Lord is telling you to leave. Don't let people hold you back because of the blessing on your life, and they've been blessed by it. Follow the voice of the Lord, not what people want you to do. So be blessed in Jesus' mighty name.